Hello, hello, and welcome again to Pattern Recognition. I am Roxanne, and I'm here with John.
Hey guys, how you doing?
And as you know, this is our Fringe Rewatch podcast, where we go episode by episode and discuss one of my all-time favorite science fiction television shows that John has never seen. And so here we are. We are still in season 1, of course. We are on episode 9, and we'll get into that right after this. Back. Just a second. I've got a cat that I don't know what he's going to do.
He is flopping all over the place.
He's flopping all over the place. He really likes to sit right in front of me and block my screen and then get his fur all up in my breathing holes. But, so today we're talking about episode 9, The Dreamscape. And this aired originally November 18th of 2008. Still, it boggles the mind how long ago that was. We're sitting at just over 10 years from when that originally aired. And I will take this time to mention, because we recorded the last 2 episodes of this back over Thanksgiving break, I think, right? Because Amanda and David were here.
Yep.
And it's been a while, and we've been on hiatus because there was some family stuff. We did post that on the feed. You may know the story. I'm not going to go into it here, but needless to say, it's been a rough start to 2019 for members of my family and members of this show's family. Amanda lost her mom and her grandmother 2 weeks apart in January. So we were out of town, she and I, for quite some time. We appreciate your patience if you have stuck with us through this unexpected hiatus, but we hope to get back to a weekly schedule from this point on. I know we've said that before, but life never, you just never know what it's going to throw at you. It's like a Fringe episode. Every episode is a new hell.
Or a speech by Jeff Goldblum about chaos,
Yeah, exactly. Does someone have a glass of water and give me your hand so I can let the crystals in the skin?
This water drop represents what you think is going to happen. Oh, no, it didn't go where you thought it would
go. And then when you drop it on a frying egg in a frying pan, then you can say this is what you thought was going to happen on drugs. But yeah, so we're looking at episode 9, The Dreamscape.
Funny enough, happens in this episode.
Yeah, well, that is true. That's a nice segue into our synopsis this week. But yeah, so we have this episode. It starts out innocently enough with a guy getting off an elevator looking harassed and harried because he is late. And he gets into this. They're like, I've been trying to call you, da-da-da-da-da. He's obviously late for some type of lecture or presentation. Yeah. He gets in there. Guy that been waiting on him makes a snarky comment.
Yeah.
Fast forwards, presentation's over. Guy says, "Rocky start, but you did good. Looking forward to talking to you more." And as Mark Young, who's the guy that we have seen get off the elevator and all that, is packing up to go, and a butterfly flies around him and lands on his finger. Mm-hmm. And he studies the butterfly a little bit, and then it flies off and it slices his finger because it's got like razor wings.
Yeah. Now, before we get too far down, just because I want to make sure that we mention it, because this might be a name that shows up again, and that is that Mark Young, the company that he was talking about was, or the company he was giving
Extends a Life?
Yeah, Extends a Life. This will make sure we get that out there because that might show up later in the series. You never know.
You never know.
J.J. Abrams.
Yeah, I didn't actually make a note of the name, but I do remember it because I just watched it before we recorded. And I do remember him saying, just as it starts to fade out, he says, as you can see in Figure 6, studies on Extends a Life or something like that. So it's kind of interesting because obviously with a name like that, we don't know exactly what he's talking about. Mm-hmm. But with a name like that, what does it sound like? It sounds like a life-prolonging drug or some sort of technology that is going to perhaps grant longer life or extend your life beyond what we currently consider our, normal. You're making a face. You're making
I'm just like, boy, he probably wishes he had taken some.
Well, but yeah, so this thing cuts him. It flies around him, cuts him some more on his neck and his face. He kills it, and then he hears a noise, and he looks down into the vents, and you can see the camera is coming up through the vents, and you see wings all up in the camera's face, and they all shoot out of the thing, and they attack him. And he tries to cover himself with his jacket, flies back onto the table, crushes a glass, gets off the table, and essentially just dives headlong out of a glass window and falls to his death atop a car.
Yep.
And with all the little butterflies flying around him, and the open ends with the massive dynamic symbol because he was at massive dynamic.
Yes.
So that's a normal Fringe opener. Like, what in the heck? Where did razor wing butterflies come from?
And the thing is that so you really do get that feeling. Oh, this is going to be a normal Fringe episode. I have no idea what's going on.
Right.
And I'm excited to continue to talk about this one because this is a show that I feel goes places new. But we'll save that for later in the discussion.
That's fine. Yeah. John came in. He was kind of taking a nap when I started to watch the episode. I was working on some stuff and he came out and he would pop in every once in a while and have little. You guys have never. Anybody who doesn't know how John watches TV, he gets very excitable and he gets very invested in what's on the screen.
I'm an animated TV.
He's
watcher.
like if imagine if you have a big sports ball fan in your family, and they watch whatever type of sports ball means a lot to them, football, baseball, whatever, and they're those animated jump from their seats when a touchdown is made or when an interception is caught or, a great play is made in baseball. And they're jumping from their seats and they're knocking popcorn everywhere and they're spilling their beer and they're woo, 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 woo. Those guys, imagine that with John, but it's never sports because he doesn't do that with sports. He does that with television.
And movies and television.
Yeah.
I get into it. I love a good story.
Yeah, it's often that I will look over and he will want a high five because something has happened and he is just jazzed.
Yep.
So it's very.
Or somebody makes a snarky comment and I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. So that's our enjoy. just know. I get that way about some things, I will say, but I'm a little bit more subdued in general. But anyhow, so that was the open. We then cut to the show. We learned that he died, clearly. Oh, yeah. And but as Walter is examining the body, and I'm kind of skipping some non-important, just
like Broyles,
flow show.
Broyles summons Olivia. Big deal.
Yeah, Broyles summons Olivia. Same old. Cancels her evening plans, whatever. But they're examining the body. She's got
life of an FBI agent. Cancel plans.
Yeah, well, she was really bummed. But, I feel... She goes... I do like what she says. She goes, I'm going to tell you something. Because he goes, get the others and get to Marlborough Airport or something like that. At Marlborough Airport. And she's like, I'm going to tell you something, and you're going to think I'm joking, but I'm not. I quit. Just for the next few days. I'll reconvene with the others after the weekend. And he's like, he just tells her the runway. I mean, he's like, you're going. Yeah. But I do like what she says. I'm going to tell you something, and you're not going to believe it, but I quit.
For the next few days.
Just for the next few days. But anyhow, they are examining the body, and Walter makes a note that there are, he has just jumped through a glass window, so he's going to be cut up.
Yeah.
But they find lacerations under his shirt, and the shirt is not cut. And so,
it's amazing.
Yeah, they're like, that's clearly not from the glass, because the glass would have cut the shirt. And Walter also points out, these are very delicate wounds that could not have been made, that would not have been made from glass thick enough to be on a window, way, as high up as it was, because that's not just thin plate glass that they're using. So they don't have any idea is really what happened. And there is a Walterism here, what I consider a Walterism. And he kind of makes this face, and he says, "Shame I don't have a lab. I'd like to examine him." And Peter rolls his eyes. He's like, "You do have a lab, Walter. Your lab at Harvard." And he smiles kind of impishly and says, "Yes, I do, don't I?" It's like he just wanted to be reminded that he did have a lab. So he was super, super excited about that. Yeah. So, but of course, Olivia goes on to investigate it. Since it happened at Massive Dynamic, they need to go talk to Nina. She continues to be Nina, offers her another job.
But really quick, during the investigation of the suicide, Olivia looks around and sees John Scott's in the audience.
She does. I forgot. There is a crowd gathered at the crime scene, and she thinks she sees him in the crowd. The camera goes back to her, goes back to the crowd, and like someone walked past him and he was gone.
Yeah, and that's it's like
so. That's also kind of a hint of kind of where some of her behavior and duress is going to lead throughout the course of the episode. But yeah, so she's talking to Nina Sharp. Nina Sharp wants her to work for him. Olivia is kind of just deflecting like she always does, and just wants to know, what do you think, as currently the acting head of this company, what would make Mark Young jump to his death? And she basically, after some, tiptoeing, or not tiptoeing, but she's kind of trying to rabbit around the actual answer, but she says, "Oh, well," and it sounds like a very contrived answer. I think most people would agree, and it probably was, but she's like, "Well, essentially he couldn't handle the cutting-edge science and technologies that he was working with."
Yeah, he succumbed to the stresses of the job.
Right, exactly. And so then it jumps to, they're looking through his home. They're investigating the case. They collect some things. The only weird thing that happens at the house is you find out that he has a display case of butterfly specimens just mounted on his wall. Not anything too scientific, but it's where they're pinned and everything, and it's up on his wall. And when Olivia looks at him, it looks like their wings are fluttering. And not even entirely fluttering. To me, it looked more like they were kind of glitching.
Twitching or something.
Yeah, it looked like they were glitching, almost like a bad video reception. But, of course, when she looks back, it's fine. But, so, we know that we see, again, Mark Young is attached to this butterfly idea. That, not only was he killed by these butterflies, but he has them in his house. She goes on, and at the office, it's probably later on, but I don't mind saying it, but she does see a note in his date book that's written in diagonals, and it says Monarch. And of course, anybody who knows anything, in 6th grade, my social studies teacher, of all people, we hatched Monarch butterflies, one for every student in our class. So, so Monarch is another butterfly tip. So we jumps back to Walter, who's still studying the body, and he basically says these lacerations came up through the tissue. They weren't cut by someone. It's the tissue essentially sliced itself open.
Responded like it was sliced.
Right.
Yeah.
Medications were all legal. He makes a note, but there was an ergoline derivative, a synthetic compound in his blood that might have been, he says he doesn't know how it was introduced, but because it's not supposed to be in his medicines, but maybe it was something for migraines. Yep. He does make that. So we see then that does point to something going on with the brain.
And while all that's going on, Peter gets a phone call.
Yeah. And I'm still frustrated, and because it's been so long since we've recorded episodes, I'm not sure how much has been revealed about this bizarre backstory. And quite frankly, I don't remember how much is ever explained about it up through the end of the first season. But I am so tired of Peter's mysterious background. I can't stand it. I don't care. I like Peter. He's a great character. But I'm more interested in the bizarre crap Walter has to say about Peter's childhood than the crime and seedy crap that he supposedly did But yeah, he gets a call from a girl, and she says, essentially, I need to see you, because he starts to explain something, and she says, don't bother coming up with a story, I know you're back, and I need to see you, and he says he can't get away, and she says, well, when? And that's as far as that conversation goes. But yeah, and he's peeking out the window like he's being followed, or he's concerned that somebody's watching, and I'm just like, this is... I have a lot of issues over the course of the entire show how do I say this? I have issues with how Peter is treated as a character throughout the show. Mm-hmm. They do great things with him. Yeah. But there are times when I'm like, you really just had to do that, I guess, didn't you? Because it's just awful.
I'll say this, and this is something that I observed, and that is the essentially three main characters of the series, which is Olivia, Peter, and his father, Walter. Each one of them seem to have a mysterious backstory that is going to be slowly revealed. Right. Something weird is going on with Olivia. Yep. Obviously, with all the visions she's seeing. Right. Peter has a weird backstory where you think he's a con man, but you also like, is he a spy or is he in the mafia or something?
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously done some serious stuff, and they kind of go through his stuff in the very first episode. But
it's almost like there's a story that nobody knows. Yeah. Nobody knows. The government doesn't know. The people around them don't know. And same thing with Walter, because you get the feeling that Walter was screwed over by the government.
In many ways, right?
In many ways. That he was screwed over, but how and why? Was it just his partner, or was it something even bigger? And so you feel you get each one of those three. Now maybe other characters in the series will have the same background. I don't know. Where it's at.
Yeah, there's one thing about the show in general up to this point that I think remains unanswered, is the Walter that Peter remembers is so much more severe and harsh, and even in the Walter that you see in like clips where they've got, because there's archive footage that comes up in this episode, he doesn't seem, and you get glimpses of a very severe Walter every now and again when he has when he snaps off at Astrid, or Olivia or Peter, but Peter is expecting this very abusive type man, and you kind of just get this kind of bumbling old guy that seems to have kind of lost his marbles a little bit, and he was in an insane asylum or an institution for a time, and of course that probably did something, but you wonder what all has gone on to or what has transpired to make this change in Walter. But anyway, that's for the rest of the show to explain. I just know that as of right now, what little they've revealed about Peter, it really feels like, because even when it pans out in the rest of this episode, which we'll get to in a second, what this interaction with this girl is, it's like they're doing this slow build, and I just want it explained, and I want them to go away. I want all of them to go.
Yeah, because it distracts from the show, honestly.
Because we've already had the episode right, and forgive me, listeners, and John, if I'm spoiling a later episode, but I believe we've already had the episode where he finds the guy with the camera, that's been taking pictures of him.
There was a scene
in a cafe earlier, and he's like, "Give me the camera," and he takes whatever, and it's like, what the hell? Yeah. What is this? So. But anyway, so we have this weird little paranoid moment with Peter, and it goes back to Olivia investigating through Mark Young's belongings that she's taken home with her. She does a search for Monarch, brings up stuff about butterflies, brings up stuff about the English monarchies and things like that, of course. And she's got this ancient, IBM laptop that makes all these really, really nice, crunchy 90s sounds. I'm like, that poor girl, she hasn't had an updated laptop in 10 years by the time this show is recorded. But, so she shuts down her computer and gets in bed, and then all of a sudden, bzz, ding, 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 here comes her computer firing back up on its own. She gets up, and she sees she's got an email, dun dun dun, from John Scott, and all it says simply, it's no subject, and it says 1312 Labrador Lane, basement level.
Yep.
So, of course, she doesn't sleep. She goes immediately to investigate this address that has popped up in her inbox. And she finds a really trashy basement storage area. It looks like probably under a building, not a house or anything. And she hears a lot of weird, like, croaking and guttural noises and thumping and banging. And there's all these blue bins, and she opens them up, and they're toads. And so she ends up having them sent to the lab, frogs and toads and larva samples and all kinds of stuff. And Charlie's like, what in the world are you doing? Because, of course, she's back at the office now. And they're having a discussion about her seeing John Scott, because she has confided in him that she's had sightings of him before. And he continues to just be like, you really just need to take a break. You know, you need to not be doing this stuff. But they get a call. Walter thinks he cracked the case, and it's all about the toads.
Yeah.
So then here we go back. We go back to Peter and the girl in a cafe. It's always the same cafe, I think, that they always show, and I think he's always in the same booth. I should pay more attention, but it always seems like the same scene setup. But it's Tessa, and they clearly have some type of previous relationship. They like seeing each other. She knows him really well, all this junk. But anyhow, she says, if I could find you, they can find you. You need to leave Boston now. And he's like, oh, it's not that simple, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, no, you need to go. And he grabs her arm, or he goes to take her hand, and she gasps, and he pulls back her cuff, and there's, like, handprint bruises. Yeah. And he says, Michael, I think is what he says. Yeah. And she goes, things have changed. And he said, oh, apparently.
Yeah, and doesn't she infer that things could be worse for you?
Yeah, she says things will be worse for you. In fact, I have it written down. Yeah, it'll be worse for you if you stay. Yeah. And so she takes off. And so, dun, 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 we have some abusive man named Michael that's going to leave handprint bruises all over him.
Not that abuse is any
not
kind
that
of
abuse
joke,
is a joke, but it's again this story.
We're seeing a lot of tropes in this episode,
right? So we have the ex-girlfriend who's now being beaten by someone they both know, that apparently she's perhaps in a relationship with, or at least working with, and he's just an abusive brute.
When we started off the episode with
and
the
so
whole,
he has
with
to
the
be
whole
the
trope,
he has to be the knight in shining armor that's gonna, you can see him get that look in his eye that he has to handle business, and it's just so not only is Peter dealing with people that can find him, they're violent people, and so. But
at this point, he also has the imperatives to say, let them come. I mean, because I want to hurt them for what they did to you.
Right.
It's kind of what the human psychology is going to direct you towards.
Right. Yeah. So, let's put that aside for now. It's a little while before we see that pop up again. But back in the lab, Walter's talking about psychophysiologic effects or psychosomatic things, where essentially the mind has the ability to cause actual physical changes on the body. Astrid says mind over matter. And they start to show archive footage of Walter doing an experiment in presumably the 80s or so, where he's got a guy in a deep, a deep hypnotic state, and he's being dosed with psychoactive drugs. So, and he's been he's in a highly suggestive state, I think is what he says. And he's been basically convinced that he's been locked in a meat locker or a meat freezer. And so he's kind of sitting in the chair, and it looks like he's kind of shivering. And he says, moreover, I've convinced him that this piece of ice is a burning coal. Yeah. And he goes over and he takes a piece of ice, he sets it on the guy's arm, and there's no audio, but he's clearly screaming. And when Walter takes it off of his arm, he's got blisters forming. Yeah. And so essentially he's saying that he points to the toads because these toads secrete a psychoactive compound on their skin. And so what the synthetic compound that was found in Mark Young's blood was a highly concentrated dose of this poison, essentially this venom. and which directly affects the fear center of the brain, the amygdala. And so essentially he hallucinated being attacked by these razor-winged butterflies, and his brain made the cuts itself.
Yeah. And I think the term was literally scared to death.
Right.
So
exactly. So, and he says it's murder, and they want to know why. And he says, well, it's 30 times what any sane person would normally take. If they were taking a drug like this, it's 30 times higher than what anyone would do. So obviously he was dosed. So, while they're there, Olivia's like, here's the deal. Because I think Astrid asks, how did you find these frogs? And she says, she basically talks to Walter about, I am still having John Scott's memories. I'm having visions of him. I want him out of my head. And so she gets back in the tank. Highly suggestive. She's given doses of, I think, LSD and stuff, of course. Walter requested a Bible to have, and I can't remember exactly why he wanted the Bible, but I know I think it helps him remember things, because Astrid would start to read a passage of scripture. I should have looked up what passage of scripture it was. Does it have it listed in your synopsis?
I don't.
But, and he finishes it word for word. She's like, you're really good at this. I didn't know you were religious. He says, oh, I'm not anymore. So yet again, we have a weird little like trigger for him to do this procedure. He needs this Bible to help him, I think, remember something. But he basically says, you're going to be in his memories. My voice is the only tether to reality. Don't, always listen to my voice no matter what. Nobody can see you, and so she has these memories. And this is one of John's favorite parts. Do you want to talk about?
Well, before he closes the door, though, Olivia does ask him about the Bible. And she's like, so what's the Bible for? And he's like, well, you're going to be lying, you're on psychoactive drugs, lying in a tank full of saline and water with an electrode on your head. So this Bible's here just in case you get electrocuted.
Oh, is that what he said?
Yeah, he actually says that.
Okay, I missed that part.
And she's like,
she says, "Praise the Lord."
Praise the Lord. And he's like, "Amen," and closes the door. So that's that last scene. So,
what is he going to give her last rites?
Pretty much.
Is that what he's saying? Okay,
pretty much. But so this scene, I absolutely love this scene. She goes into a restaurant that, in this dream state, she's on a date with her and John Scott. And in this date, she's watching, and she watches herself get up from the table. Kind of paraphrasing here a little bit, because this is the part that I love. The dream state, the dream her, gets up from the table and leaves, and she goes and sits down across the table from John Scott.
Right, and Walter does point out, she was like, "I'm leaving. What do I do?" And he was like, "Well, you're in his memory, not yours." And
I'm, for one of those things, and this is where it gets a little bit weird for me. I'm going to talk a little bit crazy. So this is obviously whatever she's seeing at this point, because the dream her is gone. This could only be stuff that's happening in John Scott's memory, because there would be no memory of what was taking place in that room at that time.
Right.
But she starts to talk to John Scott, and some of the things she says, it's almost like they're almost having an effect on him, because she says, "I loved you." She says, "I loved you, but you were never truly honest with me, and I don't even know if you really did love me." And you see him kind of shift in his seat a little bit as if he's uncomfortable. And so you're like, is this the dream or is this real?
Right. Did he do this in the memory?
Yeah. And then she says that, this one guy kills himself from the very beginning of the episode.
She says Mark Young has been killed.
And John Scott turns and looks at her, and with almost a sinister smile on his face. And this is a moment in this scene of this episode that this blows my mind, because every episode that we've seen so far, we've got cop drama episodes, we've got sci-fi episodes, we've got horror episodes, and every time this show has managed to evoke the emotion for that kind of thing that you would expect. Like the cop drama episode, I felt like I was watching a Law and Order kind of scene.
Right.
Something that I would have seen on that show. And the horror scenes in the opening of like the pilot episode, it really terrifies you.
Right.
It really drags you in. And the sci-fi episodes, like the one with the probe, and when you first get to hear about the Watcher,
right,
the Observer, those again give you that feeling of you're watching something sci-fi, and here you are in this dream state with John Scott and this sinister smile, and this gives you goosebumps, and it really evoked that emotion in me, and I'm just like, oh, how could this show have ever ended? Because this is right. Blowing my mind how good this is.
Oh, there will be some episodes later, and you'll go, "Oh my God, what are you doing, French? What are you doing?"
So
don't ruin it.
But yeah, so that's my feeling with this.
So I looked up what scripture it was, and it's from Ezekiel of all things.
Oh.
Yeah, and I really don't. Then will I sprinkle clean water upon you, and ye shall be clean from all your filthiness, and from all your idols will I cleanse you. A new heart also will I give you, and a new spirit will I put within you, and I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh, and I will give you an heart of flesh. And I mean, he goes on, and I will put my spirit within you, and cause you to walk in my statutes, and ye shall keep my judgments and do them. I'm not sure how far he went, I don't remember. But
not too far after the sprinkling of water and the new
flesh. I mean, he goes on for a bit after she stops.
Either way, that kind of memorization blows my mind.
Oh yeah, and from Ezekiel is bizarre, but it's bizarre like French. So who knows? But yeah, so maybe it's. I mean, I always try to. I took a film appreciation class in high school for a semester. Mm-hmm. And I know all the things. No, I don't. But, why that verse? Why not something that everybody's heard? Yeah, what's the meaning there? And is it because he's taking out John Scott's memories, or that's what, they're supposed to be doing at this scene? Why that? But anyway, that's probably a talk for later in the show. But
I kind of felt the same way, because I was like 1312 Labrador Lane. I was like, that sounds too familiar. That sounds a little what 1312. Why does that sound familiar? Labrador, and I'm like, dang it. There's no importance to the number 1312. There's no address, famous fictional address of 1312, or person born in 1312 that has anything to do with this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why call it Labrador when you could have called it Shepherd? I'm like, you could have called it Shepherd and have it, be this kind of little Easter egg if she's getting guided to something.
Well, Labrador Lane is an actual road in Maryland.
Oh, wow.
I mean, they are kind of up in that area, but I don't know how far from. I mean, all this happens in Boston.
Symbolism.
Symbolism, no.
Symbolism.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
Labradors are dogs. They're great. My dog is part Labrador, but. Yeah. One of my dogs, I shouldn't say just one, but anyhow. So yeah, they try to get it out. She goes to a different area. She sees a memory of John Scott talking, and Mark Young is there in the memory, and they're in some dock or parking lot or warehouse or some, it's one of those. It seems like the same location that he's killed in later, if I were to be completely honest.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's probably a similar outdoor set, but. And she sees John Scott kill a guy and, immediately wants out of the tank. So, and Mark Young and another gentleman, George somebody, I think, I don't know if they actually say that there, but he goes off with a Latino gentleman. She essentially says to Broyles about it, he was murdered. We believe Mark Young was murdered for selling tech to black market buyers. There's also this underground group that brokered the sale of the hallucinogen produced by Massive Dynamics Drug Division. It can either be a cheap street drug or it could be a chemical weapon, depending on the potency. Mm-hmm. So she wants Massive Dynamic to disclose all of Young's projects. Broyles is like, I'll do what I can.
Yeah.
So then we go back for just a second to Peter's weird backstory thing. And he's essentially waiting outside for this guy.
Yeah.
I just want it to end. We'll go through it fast. The rest of the episode is pretty fast after this.
Just quickly kind of hitting it. I mean,
he essentially attacks a guy.
Yeah, Peter shows up to intercept Michael.
Who I guess is Michael.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he actually says. He's like, isn't he watching in a car?
Yeah. And he goes over. Yeah. Knocks
He just punches the guy out. And he just knocks him down, and he says, "You touch her again, I'll kill you." Well, the guy has a gun.
Yeah. And
Peter knocks it out of his hand, punches him, knocks him down, grabs the gun, points it at him, and threatens him with his own gun and says, "You touch her again, I'll kill you." Walks away, throws the gun away. And I'm like, okay, so Peter, is what you've done So what they've now made Peter do is be worried that someone is watching him, insinuated that these people are violent, and so what does Peter do?
Yeah.
He watches them, and then he attacks them. And so it's just, you've become your own worst enemy at this point. In my opinion, you're becoming what you're afraid of someone becoming to you, and it's stupid. It doesn't gel at all with the rest of Peter, and he's had some other episodes where he's been unnecessarily angry, and it's like, what is wrong with you?
It was very tropey. I mean, the first movie of The Expendables, they do the exact same trope in that with Jason Statham's character.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, exact same situation.
Ugh. But it's just, I don't know. It's just frustrating to me that it's like they really didn't have to waste showtime with this, in my opinion. As she gets all of Young's projects, Olivia does, finds a business card for Massive Dynamic and sees that the Massive Dynamic phone number is like 1-800-MSS. It's DYMN or DYNM or something like that. I can't remember. But so she gets a thought to dial a number that spells Monarch. Yeah. And so she does. I think it's 666-2724. And she hears the voice, and she makes up a story. I'm your long distance carrier, and I would like to talk to you. And he's like, "Oh, I don't want you to call me again. Don't take my number out of your list." And he says, "Hasta luego."
Yeah.
And she remembers hearing the guy that walked off with Mark Young in John Scott's memory say the same thing the exact same way. So she knows it's the same guy.
Yeah.
They find information, track the number, track the cell phone, and they start following him. Yeah. They get stuck in a traffic jam. George Morales looks in the rearview mirror of the cab he's in, sees that there are FBI agents looking in cars, with their guns out and their sunglasses on, because that's how they would be. And he takes off out of the cab. Yeah. So there's a foot chase. They catch him. They knock him down, and he ends up going to the hospital.
Oh, yeah. He also gets hit by a car, doesn't he?
Oh, does he get hit by a car? That's right. He gets hit by a car, and this was about the time of the episode where I kind of quit watching because there's a trivia that there's a cop visible in the background or a guy in a police uniform in the background when he gets hit by the car, and he just sits and watches. He doesn't rush to the scene.
Yeah, a guy got not only was a guy hit by a car, but there were two people chasing the guy that was hit by the car.
They're probably but they got their FBI and they got guns. I guess they got it. I'm not going to worry about it. Yeah. But, and in the hospital... Oh, go ahead.
I was like, I was paid for a bit role. I'm just a walker. I'm not here to interact.
That's right. I was told not to cross that line. But in the hospital, he basically blames Massive Dynamic. He was like, why would I kill him? I want protection because they'll come after me, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. Of course. And so Olivia, because she doesn't like Massive Dynamic, just believes him immediately. Of course, you're absolutely correct. I'm going to go and I'm going to confront Nina Sharp and show my butt. That's essentially how I took the next scene, because she's like, it always brings me back here, and I think I have an answer for your job offer. And she's just being a little snarky butt. And
which ever so often she does. She'll do it. It's like it's out of character for her, but at the same time, it happens so many times
that it isn't out of character.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of a weird thing.
Weird character
she's
trait
clearly it's early enough in the show that she's just trying to figure out all this junk.
Yeah.
And that's the crappy part, She's just completely thrown for a loop with most of this. And I think that's what her outbursts and even some of Peter's and Walter's are supposed to signify, is that they're learning how to cope with this knowledge that there's all this bizarre junk happening. And this is how they cope. And sometimes, the seal pops on the pressure cooker.
Yeah.
And so, anyhow, while this is going on, they're kind of jumping back and forth between George in the hospital and Nina and Olivia's argument. And he's tapping his nurse call button. And he hears somebody come in, and he's like, finally, what took you so long? And you can see in the background that it's somebody in a suit. So you know that something's not kosher. And it eventually, he looks up, and it's a very whitewashed, obviously dreamlike, almost John Scott. And he's got a knife, and he says, John, I won't tell anything, I won't say anything. And a nurse actually walks in at that point, and no one else is in the room, but she sees George Morales' neck slit open on its own.
Yeah.
And so yeah, clearly he's been dosed with the same thing, and his brain has affected this physical change on his body. But, and he's killed. Broyles gives her the bad news, after she's already showed her butt and made threats toward Nina, who's basically said, I seriously doubt your witness will be able to provide any actionable evidence against Massive Dynamic or William Bell. And obviously he can't. So she has a little rant at Broyles about Nina Sharp and how she thinks Nina Sharp's the ultimate evil behind everything, because this black market drug dealer told her that she was. Yeah. Let me trust my sources. But, Nina Sharp is definitely shady.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, definitely shady. But, yeah, this whole, you're right. You mass market drugs for the youths, and I'm going to believe everything you tell me. It just, I don't know. It seemed dumb. But,
essentially, he kind of brushes her off.
Broyles does. Yeah, he's like, unless you actually have proof that she's done something, keep your stuff to yourself.
And so she ends up going back to Walter to try and go to the tank.
Right, because he's like, what does he say? I enjoy nothing more than taking drugs. I enjoy nothing, and essentially all of the stuff in the lab, and he's like, it's just not safe for you, and I'm not going to do it. Yeah. I will try to figure out a better way, but this isn't it. And we've skipped over the last glimpse of this episode into Peter's mysterious backstory.
Yeah, this is
it's stupid. It's just
weird.
Ridiculous. Michael, all beat to heck, his face is all swollen, runs into, meets up with the guy on the street, and they're walking, and the guy goes, hey, what happened to you? And he says, Peter Bishop. And he goes, oh, really? And that's it. It's like, okay, so now presumably all the bad guys know that Peter Bishop's back in town.
Yeah.
So
doesn't
be
matter.
ready. Be ready. Let's see if anything transpires in episode 10 about Peter Bishop's mysterious backstory with the violent Michael and Tessa the Abused. I don't remember, but I really don't think it ever really pans out into anything.
Yeah. Well, and then of course after this, the last scene is Olivia in her apartment.
Yeah.
Going to bed. And the mysterious email.
Ooh, doot, doot, doot. Her computer kicks on again after she shut it off. Because she is a good computer user who shuts her computer down every time she walks away. She doesn't leave it running all the time.
I don't know what you're talking about.
What's that light coming from the game room? Oh, John's laptop is still on and shining brightly. Mm-hmm. No, go ahead.
Guiding us through the night.
That's right. Who needs night lights?
But no, John, it's a message from John Scott that says, I saw you in the restaurant.
Yeah, dun, 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 and then it ends. So, we took a little longer than I wanted to kind of go over all that, but that was the synopsis. So this is the part of the show where we look up, just kind of like, we look at some guest stars, and I still have not pulled that up. Here we go. Really, the only people that were in this that weren't normally in the show was Mark Young, and I don't even, oh, there he is. Oh, he's got a name that I can't really pronounce, but it's Ptolemy Slocum. And he didn't ring any bells for me. He was just kind of your average redhead, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
That was Mark Young?
No, he's, okay, what? He is the guy. He's in Westworld.
Oh.
He's the really jerk cleanup guy.
Oh.
That's always like, you're going to get us fired. And he's clearly kind of pervy or something. He just comes off weird, but yeah, that is him. I didn't realize that, so never mind. He was somebody. Then we have George was Yul Vasquez. Let me actually pronounce words. And Tess, the girl that we see for a second, that's Peter Bishop's old flame. Let's see, who is she? Susan Meisner. And then Michael Kelly was David Vadim. But really, that's it. Even all these other people that they mention, I have no idea. I don't even remember characters in the show name that. So David Vadim he's been in some movies. Oh, he was in Air Force One, Exit Wounds, G.I. Jane. He was in like old
military movies of the 90s.
Yeah, he's born in Ukraine and raised in Brooklyn, New York. So I mean, he was in Punisher Warzone.
Okay. So a lot of action movies. From the sounds of it too.
He's been in a ton of stuff. He was in Daredevil. He played Sergei in Daredevil, the TV series.
Okay.
So yeah, he's quite active. So just because I don't recognize him doesn't mean that he's not anyone. Obviously, my memory is not always great. Susan Meisner was in Chicago, The Forgotten. She's been on a lot of things as well. So she's currently in a TV series in post-production. She was in an episode of Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan on Amazon. Mm-hmm. Again, lots of people. She was on The Americans. She may have been... she may not have been one of the main characters, but she was on it quite a bit. So.
Okay.
But as far as Aniel Vasquez, again, Runaway Bride, American Gangster, the A-Team movie... So yeah, so these all of these are people that have been in other things. That in fact, he's on the new Netflix show Russian Doll that has just came out,
kicked out, yeah,
with Natasha Lyonne in it. So it looks like a Groundhog Day type thing.
Yeah.
So it was time for a new Groundhog Day type thing. We also, this has nothing to do with Fringe, but we also have on the back of my IMDb as I'm pulling all these up, we have What Men Want, which is the reverse version of What Women Want, but the same exact thing where Taraji P. Henson is able to hear the thoughts of men. Yeah. So it's like, really, guys? Really? Okay, whatever. Yeah. It's cool. It's been long enough, but...
I promise you it's not that exciting.
I really don't want to know. It's probably way more disgusting than anything.
It's random thoughts every 15 seconds.
Oh, yeah, well, that's what women are too, though, exactly. I think, you know?
Exactly.
But anyway, so for our trivia for this week, after our not really fruitful guest star discussion, we have the plane ticket in Young's apartment is for Oceanic Air, which anybody who is an Abrams fan person, they would know that that is definitely a prominent feature in Abrams' other primetime hit, Lost.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's, let's see, what else is there? At the start of the episode, you found this one, which I didn't really know, but another Abrams tie-in could be. I mean, obviously it's not the exact same.
Yeah.
But at the start of the episode, when she's on the phone, Olivia is talking to a Beth about a surprise party for Bobby, and that's where she was going to go, and Broyles was like, get to the airport.
Yeah.
And, she quit for 5 seconds. Well, apparently somebody was on, listening with their good ears and happened to remember that in Cloverfield, the movie begins with a surprise going away party for the main character, Rob, whose best friend is in attendance, and her name is Beth.
Yeah.
So
is it a little Easter egg towards...
Is that a little Easter egg?
I think so.
Could this be some foreshadowing to future events that we know will happen at the end of the first season of Fringe? That maybe...
Maybe, but hey, everything that can tie in Cloverfield is a good thing.
I know. Yeah, we've done that in a couple of our podcasts now. We're Cloverfield fans over here, and I don't want to hear it if you're not. Yeah. You are entitled and more than welcome to have that opinion, but don't share it with me.
Yeah, come at me, bro, because I am very quick with my block button. I was kidding.
Let's not come at any bros right now, okay? A couple other things. I don't know if we mentioned this last episode, but there was... And we may have, because it seems familiar now, but I don't know if it's just because you mentioned it before we started. But in the last episode, there was a lone butterfly evident on the side of a white trash can in The Equation, which was the last episode, which was likely a foreshadowing of the fatal drug-induced leap from the massive dynamic building by Mark Young.
Yeah, and I do remember talking about it because I was like, that butterfly looks fake.
Well, was it an actual butterfly? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or was it a picture of a butterfly?
I think, we couldn't tell, but I was like, man, this looks
Because isn't there one of the glyphs that's a butterfly, too?
Yeah.
See, and I feel like we might have talked about it in that regard, but I don't remember.
Yeah.
But you know. And anyway, it's probably a clue. Then we also have, in that same vein, in this episode, when the car chase is happening, I believe, there is a van featuring a triangular logo for the Trevisanus Brothers Estimators. And they, while we have not seen them so far, they do feature, at least that logo will feature in the next episode somewhat. So, is this something that they're doing that maybe we haven't realized and haven't found any trivia on yet, where, Abrams is breadcrumbing us all the way to the end? Our next section is Observer Observed, and he was seen at the very beginning of the episode in the back of the elevator that Mark Young exits when he gets out to do his meeting. And the glyphs for this episode were spelled out voice, which is a reference to Walter and Olivia while she's in the tank, and he basically says, my voice
is your only tether.
Is your tether to reality. Mm-hmm. So we had a couple Walterisms. Early on in the episode, there's a whole exchange about coffee yogurt that I kind of enjoyed, but the last part of it is he tells to Astrid is, in case you haven't noticed, I can be quite obsessive. But that one isn't the cream of the crop, in my opinion. The best Walterism of this episode that anybody that watches this show will tell you is the episode in which Olivia's about to get into the tank, and Walter makes a very strange little ooh sound, and he smiles a little bit, and he goes, I just got an erection. So cover your kids' ears reactively. But Astrid and Olivia look at him quite perplexed, and he says, oh, fear not, it's nothing to do with your state of undress. I think I simply need to urinate. But
biology.
So anyway, that is this episode. Tell us on all the things. You guys can get a hold of us on Facebook, Instagram, website. What's the other thing that we use? The bird one, Twitter?
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We do have a group for Passion Nerdly.
We do.
You can follow us on Instagram at either our regular channels, which both Roxy and I have, or you can go to Passion Nerdly Podcast, which is a channel that'll tell you when stuff is coming. Mm-hmm. And I think that's about it. We hopped off Tumblr with all the craziness going on there.
Yeah, and I hadn't been on Tumblr in a long time. It's crazy there, guys. It's crazy.
Yeah. So.
But, that's it for this week, and we will see y'all next week, and hopefully, knock on wood or acrylic or whatever this is made out of, and we'll just say that nothing crazy goes on. A fringe episode does not transpire in our own lives between now and then, but we shall talk to you soon.
All right. Talk to you later, guys.
Bye.